the issue of electoral reforms because Parliament is full of obscure rules, and it seems that Teal crossbench has been looking at the fine print. Today, Helen Haynes asked what we call a Dorothy Dixer in question time, not to the government but to a colleague, Nick Ryan.
My question is to the member for Kooyong under Standing Order 99. I refer to private members' business, Order of the Day number 4, Lobbying, Improving Government Honesty and Trust Bill 2024, standing in the member's name. Can the member tell the House why debate on this bill should be resumed urgently?
Thank you, Speaker. And I thank the member for Indi for her question.
All right, joining the panel now is independent member for North Sydney, Kylea. Tink, is this the new independent approach, sort of chat amongst yourselves because you're not happy with what the government's saying when you ask them questions?
Well, I think we've talked about it before. You know, coming into this place is an incredibly surreal experience. It doesn't operate like any other work environment, and not surprisingly, there's not a lot of people in this House who are really motivated to help us get up to school really quickly with the subtleties of being able to try and get messaging through the House. So we're still learning, but I think today, you know, it had been talked about doing it on a couple of other occasions, but today the planets just aligned.
So this was up the sleeve. We'll pull this out when we really need to get a bit of attention.
Well, I think what we're trying to do, honestly, is to draw the conversation back to issues that actually matter to everyday Australians. You know, I think you sometimes get too lost in the process of this place and we disconnect from what...
So electoral reform, how vehemently opposed to this? Because the everyday Australians will go, well, this is self-interest. So the major parties are acting in self-interest, but so are Teal or community MPs or whatever the label you want on it, because you want to be able to outspend Liberal MPs or candidates as you did last time.
Look, I think, there's so much in that question. Let me start with the fact that it's not electoral reform that I have an issue with. And in fact, everybody who sits on the crossbench has been calling for electoral reform before we were even elected. You know, it was a massive issue for our communities, and our communities wanted to see greater transparency around who's giving money where and when, the amounts that are being given and how that money is being spent. And so I'm very happy to proceed with electoral reform. I think what stinks in this situation is the fact that this is the bill that has been put in front of us all today.
With a few notes. They're your notes.
They're my notes, scribbling notes. These are my additional notes. And what doesn't make sense about this is if this legislation truly stacks up, if this is good legislation, this is the largest piece of reform of our democratic principles in over 40 years, yet the government doesn't want it to go to an inquiry. And that's when your alarm bells start going off. If the two major parties have come to a deal around this, I think what we can be fairly certain is that the interests of the two major parties are protected in this reform. But I really question how this is going to help not incumbents but new people into this system, because it's fairly strict in terms of how people can engage.
They say they're trying to take the big money out of politics, which I'm sure you would agree with in the broad principle.
100%.
Is the status quo better than what they're putting forward? Is that where we're going to land? Or at least this is something to take the huge money out of what we've been seeing in the past. Clive Palmer is an obvious example.
Yeah, look, it may be. The fact is we don't know because we haven't been given an opportunity to scrutinise it, and nobody in the House of Reps will be given that opportunity because they're saying it's coming through by the end of this week. To be really clear, I've called for the drop to $1,000 from the very beginning. Very, very happy with that. I've called for as close to real-time reporting as possible. Very, very happy with that. And in truth, have been doing that on my own website to try and prove that it could be done. What I don't know is there's 3 pages of exclusions in here about what constitutes a gift. So where do union fees fit in here? Where do memberships for things like the Mackenzie Foundation fit? You know, there is so much that is unknown in here. And the fact of the matter is I just think if we've got a situation where the two major parties are happy with it and they've agreed this is what works for them, the truth of the matter is it's probably making it harder for people like myself as a community independent to crack this system. And to your point about outspending, I think this is really interesting. So to be really clear, from what I understand, this legislation enables the major parties to spend $90 million nationally on an election. As an independent, I will get to spend $800,000.
Well, my point around that was that Teal MPs outspent on a seat basis. So take what you're saying around national spend, which I actually put to the previous Labor guest we had on. Yeah. But at a seat basis, you were able to... You, plural, were able to outspend Liberal
Did we though, Tom?
MPs.
Do you know that? Because the fact of the matter is we don't know what the major parties spent seat by seat. And in fact, on Sunday when I was briefed on this, I was told of a member in a Victorian seat who spent over $2 million on his seat in one of the major parties.
That might have been the one with a lot of access to money.
Well, but I think the point is that you know what I spent. You know what every independent spent because we report as individuals. We're very transparent. You do not know.
That's a fair point, but from what we gather and what we're told, that was the case. So
yeah, I think it's a big furphy, to tell you the truth, because what I'm starting to understand is that the major parties they run somebody in every seat, but they certainly do not spend the same amount in every seat. So if they have a seat at risk, they will double down on expenditure in that. And, you know, what we've already heard is that this legislation will enable the major parties to spend a minimum of $800,000 in every seat, and then they can top that spend up with brand advertising. So they can run Vote Liberal, Vote Labor, billboards across the electorate, and that won't count to that individual spend. So this is where, you know, from my point of view, we talk a lot in this country about the difference between equality and equity. What I'm arguing for is that it should be equitable. All Australians should be able to get access to this political system. And I think at the moment we have a duopoly, a Westminster system that is fighting to protect itself. They don't want more of us.
It's looking increasingly likely that Labor won't unveil a 2035 climate target until next year. What's your view on that? But also more generally, do you think voters are less interested in climate change action due to the cost of living? What's the kind of feeling in your electorate? I know that it's not going to be around that much longer, but what's your sense?
So I'm going to answer it backwards.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is cost of living is undoubtedly the biggest issue facing our country at the moment. But unfortunately, a large percentage of those issues are connected to climate change, whether it's your cost of insurance, whether it's the cost of how you're getting around the country, whether it's the food you're buying because we've got food security issues. They all tie back to climate inaction and the fact we've been too slow moving. So while I don't expect to see climate action as the number one issue when people are being asked, I do think people are savvy enough to understand it is the issue we cannot ignore. You know, that movie Don't Look Up. I think people get a sense that the major parties are really trying to say to us at the moment, don't look up, just stay focused here. You know, here's the squirrel. To your second point, is it acceptable for our Prime Minister to not come forward with a target? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And, you know, today we heard the Environment Minister stand up and say the reason they're not telling us is because they're waiting for the Climate Change Authority to let them know what it should be. Well, the Climate Change Authority has intimated it should be at least between 65 and 75%. And to be honest, I think I could possibly live with it if the government came out and said they will guarantee they will accept the Climate Change Authority's target. Yeah. I could almost live with it. But the no comment, it's not acceptable.
What's your plan for the next election?
I'm still weighing up the options, to be honest, and I'm not. I know, but to be really frank, I'd be really happy to go back to my life. I'd be really happy to go back to my kids. Doing this gig is really tough. But then I come to the House on a day like today, and you see stuff like this, and it just makes me realise communities like mine and voices like this are really important in this place.
So what are the options?
Run in the House, run in the Senate, go to a wider perspective, and
House
consider
in Bradfield.
There's a number of seats. Interestingly, I've had people reach out to me in both Bennelong and Berowra, so it seems to be the suburbs of B that want a bit of Tink in their life. But I think, you know, the other thing is that a Senate run might be something that would be really interesting as well, because it's never been done. We've never had an independent senator. And actually, in this legislation, if this comes through, you'll never get an independent senator.
So Berowra, Bradfield, Bennelong,
Bradfield, Bennelong. I even got invited to Queensland recently.
Oh,
it sounds like you're leaning towards being there, though, on the ballot ticket.
As I said, I'd be really happy to go home. I would really like to go back to my old life.
I'm fired up for politics now.
Well, I wouldn't miss that. I wouldn't.
We could do
That's very kind.
Anyway.
I'm sure you'll tell us next time.
Yes. You first.
All right, there we go. Tune in next time when Kylea Tink's on.